Hello, I'm Christina, um, coach at Heart Horizon Astrology and host of Astrology with Heart, and welcome to episode 5 of the podcast. So today we're going to be mainly talking about sign of Scorpio and the new moon we have in Scorpio. It's happening on the 20th of November. It'll be at 6:46 a.m. GMT. So I'm in United Kingdom. If you are somewhere else in the world, please adjust for your location. And it'll be happening at 28 degrees 11 minutes. So what do we know about Scorpio? Well, Scorpio is it's a fixed feminine water sign. So very, very deeply emotional, magnetic, penetrating, intimate, private, known for being good keeper of secrets. A sign that is very comfortable in the darker side of life. It gets the dark stuff that happens. It's fantastic for dealing with very, very strong emotions and emotional experiences. It's a sign that will ask itself what I call the 5 whys to get to the radical honesty, the root truth of anything, and just really great at just being able to sit with it and go through it. Associated with research, emotional intensity and psychological intensity. So if you are a therapist or you have a therapist, then I would dare say there's a lot of Scorpio energy there in your chart as a therapist. And something that tends to be the case with a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists, because just have this amazing awareness of people's emotional experiences and lack of judgment. They're able to listen, which is really important. So I'm going to talk about what I deem to be the 3 big themes of Scorpio, just so we can get a little bit more intimate with it. There you go. So I would say the biggest theme with Scorpio is transformation, and I would really like for you to visualize for me 2 different things. Number 1 is the Ouroboros. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's the snake that eats itself. So it's a snake in a circle and it's eating its tail. And it's a representation of the death to rebirth continuous process. The other one, which I love and I often use in my posts, is the caterpillar to butterfly going through that chrysalis process. And I think this one is a really great one for talking about that amazing transformation process that happens. And for anyone that has gone through these kind of huge transformations, you will understand that the chrysalis is deeply painful. It's a bit like hell. But you do move out of it into something better, which is usually you being more able, stronger, braver, wiser, better in general at things. And you will tend to find that Scorpio is got like a heat-seeking missile for these intense experiences, because the energy wants to transform itself. And we're talking about some of the darker side of that in a moment. But really anything that takes us to the brink of death, like I'm talking metaphysical more than physical, but physical too. Situation where we kind of reach that point and we burst through the barriers of the other side of it. So the second key area of Scorpio, and I think this is actually a really lovely one, and it's shared with all the water signs, so that's Cancer and Pisces, is emotional truth and being able to sit, and I mentioned it before there with the therapist, being able to sit with itself or sit with other people and talk about these emotive experiences, talk about experiences of deep trauma, pain, emotional intensity and volatility. Really anything that is kind of at a deep desire level. As I say, fears, phobias, traumas, guilt, maybe we've done or said some awful things, and it's an opportunity within ourselves and with others to be able to heal, to be able to talk about it, to be vulnerable, to almost be quite fragile, and to not be judged, to be listened to, and to be able to ask ourselves as 5 whys, why did I do this? Well, how did I get here? And to heal those things, be able to purge everything that we don't need to take with us. So travel light. We don't need to take them. Let's not carry them forward. Let's get rid of them. And I do think that that opens up that space, what I call radical honesty. And it's something that, you know, if you're Scorpionic yourself, you will very, very likely ask yourself in some way those 5 whys, you know. Why do I desire this? Why do I want this? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why did I do what I did? Why did I feel that intensity that I felt? What did I say to that person? What I said? And just be able to understand yourself psychologically much, much better. And as I say, being able to purge that material through that understanding and to move towards a space where you're transforming yourself into that better version of yourself all the time. And the third one is soul bonding. Now, I put soul bonding and I'm going, why did I put that? But I'm looking at it more from the word soul. So if you're familiar with the evolutionary astrology school in the USA, I studied with them. They're absolutely awesome. The founder was Jeffrey Wolf Green. He's got a number of readings and books and DVDs out, and he talks about Pluto Scorpio energy being the seat of the soul, and that it being the most integral energy when we're looking at the soul's infinite experience. So moving through life from life and evolving, challenging itself to evolve within each lifetime. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the symbols. And these will help you understand Scorpio a little bit more. So the first symbol is the scorpion. And the scorpion, as you know, you can get very close to the scorpion, but if it's not in a happy mood, it's going to sting you. And it's going to be very painful. And I think of it as, you know, I want you to come close to me, but if I don't trust you, I'm going to hurt you. And if you leave at that point, then, you know, you're never going to get that place of full trust with me. But if you stick at it, eventually I'm not going to stink, yeah? And I tend to find that with a lot of Scorpios. They're immediately distrustful. Immediately, like, it's like they've got this intense radar all the time because it's the psychic sense. It's trying to psych you out a little bit and figure out, you know, what are your intentions? Why are you trying to get close to me? Why do you want to know that? If I tell you that, are you going to use it on me at some later point? And so it kind of susses you out a lot before it will allow you to get close enough so you can build that trust and that intimacy. The second symbol is the eagle, which is kind of my favorite in a way. I don't know why. And so you've got this eagle that's kind of soaring high up in the sky, and it has this amazing penetrating sight. It's so accurate, its sight, and it can see everything, but at the same time it sees the detail and it sees the prey, and it can just swoop down and grab it with accuracy. And then the third symbol, which is deemed to be the most evolved of Scorpio, is the phoenix. And the phoenix is basically transformed itself through fire. So it, you know, it's gone through that entire process of transformation and through that painful part, and it has come out that stronger, better, wiser, amazing self, a bit like the caterpillar to the butterfly. You know how much I love talking about the shadow side of the signs. Quite funny when you consider that Scorpio loves sitting in its own shadow. But it does have a shadow side, like they all do. And this is an energy of great power and control. And Not sure I should be mentioning this now, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you have read the 50 Shades books or watched the films, then Christian Grey is very, very much a Scorpio. Very much so. That need for control, that intense sexual experience, those wounds, childhood wounds and traumas, and obviously the deeply emotive experiences that they go through in the books and the films, hugely Scorpionic. So you're looking at controlling behavior, stalking behavior, deep secrets, betrayals, especially emotional and physical betrayals, jealousy, vindictive behavior, looking to get even, emotional manipulation. That's another one. That's a big one. Power plays and unprocessed grief, rage, and trauma. I find another one on the shadow side of Scorpio is withholding. So, you can get close to me, but if there's something there I'm not sure about, I will pull way, way back and give you my cold front. So I will completely withhold from you any kind of emotional intimacy or physical intimacy or any kind. Another one, this is a nasty one that I experienced not so long ago, was the sabotage that happened. So if I can't have you, no one can, and I'm going to kill myself over it. That's a pretty nasty one, especially for the other person who says, please just get over it. But no, no. I've also experienced some heavy emotional and physical betrayals. And again, going back to the transformation, they are there energetically by design. If you can bring yourself to your higher self over it and see that those experiences are designed for you to experience that gamut of emotional experience and to understand yourself, your drives, your desires, your fears much, much better, and to move beyond them. Give yourself an opportunity to be the very, very best version you can. Another one is fixation. So this is the sign of penetration and kind of investigative research. So it's like this tunnel vision goes on. It can be so focused and fixated on one thing to the point of obsession. And that in a relationship, when someone's giving you so much of their full attention, can be absolutely wonderful. But if it gets to a point where it's majorly obsessive and you don't want it, it can be pretty nasty. So how does it come up in relationships now that we've now that we've started talking about that? So there can be a bit of a tendency to test the loyalty of the other person, really test them, or to what we might refer to as hoard information, keep secrets, and it's a bit of a case of I know something you don't know, and then use them as leverage later on, or to extract very deep material from you and then use it later on in things like legal battles, because legal battles tends to be a Plutonian theme as well. An over-obsession with control. We spoke about control before. Definitely on the evolutionary path of Scorpio is to learn to let go and let go of control, because in the outer environment there will be a number of things that we cannot really control. And so it's that ability to be able to allow that energy to fall away, is that deep purging again. So let's take a look at the chart for the new moon in Scorpio. And what you can see there now is I've removed some of the chaos on the wheel, and I've just really focused on the sun and the moon and the main aspects it's making. And so if you look here on the far left, you'll see the moon, the sun, don't worry about black moon Lilith so much, and Mercury. And Mercury, see the red? Mercury is there in retrograde, and it's what we called Cazimi. It's when a planet gets within a few degrees of the sun. So this is, look, they're all at 28 degrees, so it's right on top of it. And we actually call that combust. And what that means is the sun itself is very fiery and very big, and it can tend to burn the planet that's close to it. And in this case, Mercury, although Mercury fares far, far better than some of the other planets, simply because Mercury is not normally too far away from the sun. So you can see here that Mercury is there. It's in retrograde, so it's moving backwards, and it's right on top of the sun and the moon. And what does that mean then, seems as it's combined with the sun and the moon? Well, whenever we see Mercury in retrograde, you can take quite a lot of words and you can put re in front of them. So rethink, reanalyze, re-remember, redo, reorganize, reconsider. But I think when we're looking about Scorpio, we can be a little bit more specific. And I would say re-feel, as in feeling, and re-experience and revisit that shadow. And that one is kind of sticking with me most now from an intuitive viewpoint, that I think this is a quite a wild experience to revisit that shadow, and to really get a chance to, sit with those 5 whys. And just to explain that, that's pretty much saying, well, why do I do this, and letting yourself respond. And then when you get a response, saying, well, why? And keep going until you get to the root cause of it, and don't push it aside. Don't feel you need to cover it up, no matter how that feels, no matter how much you might hate what you're finding out about yourself. It's a really, really valuable shadow journey with this Scorpio energy that you can take. And with Mercury there, I'd say, this is about communication. This is about thoughts and attaching thoughts to feelings and what those thoughts bring up. But not only thoughts, that can actually be revisiting conversations, maybe conversations you've had with other people, or even things that you've read. So there has been, over the years, a number of books especially, and even films that have had such a huge effect on how I thought about myself and the things that I've done in my life, and have made such an impact on me. And every now and then I like to revisit them. And I think if you conjure up one of those books or films or passages or whatever it is, really do consider using this time during the new moon to go back there and absorb it back in, and see if you look at it the same way. Now, just bear in mind that usually with Mercury retrograde, the recommendation is to be inward and not outward. So to kind of gather information and go over things, but don't make any committed steps. Don't really take any action. So let's say, for example, if you're thinking about a legal case, maybe you thought about it before and you've gone back over it and you're like, I really need to think about this again as maybe something I need to do, but don't sign any papers yet. Just do your research. And research is another word associated with Scorpio, so even better. Or, have those conversations first and then just sit on it and let it simmer in your head, or talk it through with other people that you trust. Notice how I'm picking up on these Scorpio words now. Do that and give yourself an opportunity to have that space and that extra time to really consider things in deeper detail. Do your due diligence and research on them. What you can also see on that chart, and I'm going to explain the lines again. So you can see red line that's going from Sun, Moon and Mercury across to a little purple planet there. That's Uranus. And Uranus has been particularly active, especially since Pluto moved into Aquarius. So it's been quite an active participant energetically, and I foresee that will actually get stronger. So we've got Uranus here, it's in red, so it's also retrograding, and it's in an opposition. And oppositions in practice work a lot like seesaws. So, you see kids on the seesaw and one goes up and the other goes down, and then vice versa. It kind of tends to pull from one side and then the other. And really the aim is to get to an integration point, a point of balance between the two. So we see here that Uranus is bringing in some energy, and it would be easy for us to, if we were on the Uranian side, rebelling against what that is. So let's try and create a story out of this. I mentioned before about, using that Mercury to go inward again, to revisit that shadow material or things that we've read or conversations that we've had, to give ourselves a little bit more feedback about who we are and what we've done and why we've done it, perhaps. And there could be a need with Uranus there to pull away from it, to almost run away from it. But, you're not going to be using that energy positively if you run away from it. I think a gift with Uranus is that it's subjective. So Scorpio energy is very subjective. It's very personal. It's emotional. Uranus isn't. Uranus is quite robotic. It's objective, and it has the ability to be able to separate itself and observe, almost take itself out of its body and observe. It's the energy of freedom and liberation. And so if we are pulling up this kind of heavy material, how can Uranus allow for us to liberate from whatever is being shaken up at this point? Can we use it that way positively? What I also like about Uranus is when it's associated with Scorpionic energy is, yes, and it does allow us to step back, but it also looks at things in a very different way. It separates us from some of the emotional intensity of it at the same time. And astrology does that. I can look on the page at something that's very, very personal, but by looking at it on the page, I'm observing it. I'm observing it as symbols, which is giving a more objective and detached viewpoint. So one of the things you can do with Mercury there is to write it down or to journal it, just to write it, and whatever that is, we're feeling it at that moment, jot it down. Or something else I do, which you might like to do, is I have something which I call painter poetry, and I take any of that painful material and I kind of scribble it down, and then I start to weave it into some kind of poetry, which actually makes it quite beautiful. So there's different ways you can use those two energies in tandem with each other. But as I say, the point of the opposition is to really just get into some kind of balance instead of seesawing one to the other, leaning into it and then, taking yourself directly out of it or running from it, to sit in it and say, okay, can I be a bit more detached about it? Can I go there and can I sit with it and can I look at it in a slightly different way? And how do I liberate from some of those things that I'm figuring out right now? I'm just going to come off that a minute, and I know it's going to be very messy again. But I just want to show you, wherever it is, where are you now? So we've got Pluto here. So whenever we have a new or full moon in a particular sign, we look at the ruler. And the ruler of Scorpio, or the modern ruler of Scorpio, is Pluto. And Pluto, interestingly enough, is in Aquarius. Same as Uranus, okay? Uranus, Aquarius. Same energy. And so that's bringing about a lot more of that ability to detach, to psychologically go deep, but to find a way to liberate ourselves from what we've been. And that can be something that we use in terms of the transformation. another thing to note here is that Scorpio and Aquarius have something in common. And I see this as being quite integral at this new moon as well. And what they have in common is truth. Aquarius is actually known as the sword of truth, more from a moral viewpoint, to be fair. But whereas Scorpio is like, how emotionally deep can you take this? How honest can you be about who you are and what you've done and where you've been? But both of them are about truth. And I call this the ugly cry truth. It's the, I have betrayed you so bad, I've killed someone or something. Okay, like that's a little extreme, I know, but something has been killed, something has been severed here. And it's about getting to the core of that and being able to admit to it and be open about it and to state it. And because that process in itself brings it into conscious awareness and it allows you to release it, or it definitely allows in this for, Uranus and Aquarius to be able to go, what is that all about? And give that objective viewpoint on it. So at a general viewpoint, Pluto in Aquarius is the most slow-moving planet. And I see that as us getting much, much smarter. And if Scorpio is associated with the emotional IQ, it really improves that overall for our ability to be a lot more psychologically and emotionally aware of ourselves and others. And also, generalistically, the ability to be able to, do that kind of detachment exercise as we move forward in life, to be able to rise above some of those natural human reactions that we have and just understand them better. I mean, Aquarius as an archetype is AI, it's robotics, it's tech, it's, it is extremely smart, but it's very linear smart. So we kind of do need to fuse them together, absolutely, but it does help to have that objective viewpoint too. So I'm going to click back on the Sun and Moon again because I want to show something else here. So obviously we have this interplay of Scorpio, Sun, Moon, Mercury all together in a conjunction, and we have this very magical water trine happening too. So if we follow these kind of greenish blue lines here with the triangle on them, that's a trine. And you've got that coming down to Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces and Saturn at 25 degrees of Pisces there. They're in a conjunction together. And then you can't see the other leg of it now, but I promise you it's there. Just imagine it. The other side coming up here to Jupiter in Cancer, the third water sign, and then trining back to the moon. So you've got Moon, Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Neptune, and Jupiter all in water signs. Oh my gosh, guys, you need to get out your umbrellas and your tissues here. This is fierce emotional energy. This is hugely intuitive. Very, very sensitive. I mean, Jupiter expands everything it touches. So, that Cancerian energy is going to be amplified. That's high sensitivity. It's kind of a shy energy. It really kind of needs to get to know you. Linking that to Scorpio's need for don't get too close, otherwise I'll sting you until I trust you. And once I trust you and I've tested you a few times, then the loyalty in that will begin. And then you've got this, this conjunction that's been there for quite a while, and I've spoken about it quite a lot, between Saturn and Neptune, and a lot there to do with, Neptune in its own sign of Pisces, come on, how is that for being very transcendental and connected to the universe, and, these unseen signs and symbols coming in, but also with Saturn in Pisces being, I think, very much about permeable boundaries. I mean, Saturn is our perimeters, it's our boundaries, and so with Pisces there, those boundaries are a lot less than they were, and with all of the water signs, they're going to be a little bit more permeable anyway. And so, do take a little heed and do take a little care on that your boundaries may not be as secure and structured as they have been. How can you use that really for your positivity and for your own growth? But just to be aware, if you're someone that's quite sensitive anyway, that you may be a little bit more sensitive than you normally are. You know, and whatever you feel, you're very likely to feel at a much deeper level. You know, things that you might not be as upset about, you probably will be upset about. And that's absolutely fine. And again, if you can, really tap into that Uranus energy for a little bit of stabilization there, because that is a hell of a lot of water going on. What you can also see is that Neptune is at 29, Uranus is also at 29, and the 29th degree, if you are aware of it, is called the anaretic degree. And this is the final degree that a planet will move through before it moves into the next sign. And so it is said to contain what we call the fullness of the archetype. So it's the most intense and strengthened version of that energy. So, you know, particularly those two signs, that Neptune in Pisces, as I say, it's already in its own sign. It's going to be, you know, extremely open, extremely emotive, very, very much about intercepting those, what I call unseen signs or signs from the universe, going to be urging you to be more flowing. You know, not to be overly planning, not to be too Virgo and plan every little detail, but to be very open and very fluid in what happens in your life right now. And also opportunities there to be very highly spiritually connected to nature, connected to animals, to really be very compassionate and empathetic. And so you've got quite a lot of what I call very feminine themes going on with this empathy, compassion, with this emotional vulnerability in the Scorpio, and with that sensitivity and, you know, with Cancer being the sign of, you know, our private life, our most private self, our family. This is our sense of bonding. So yeah, very emotive sign. Set of signs, should I say, going on right now, and that's going to continue for quite a number of weeks now, definitely through November and early December anyway. What we also see, I'm just going to jump onto Uranus there, is that there is, I know I said these planets at 29, but they're actually in sextile to each other, and sextile would be a fairly positive aspect, but more of an aspect of opportunity. And so it really is about very consciously tapping into what these two might represent for you. And I'm just going to give you a few more words associated with them too, just to kind of stay in your conscious mind and your short-term memory. That Uranus would be liberation, freedom, would be about tech, AI, robotics, artificial reality, augmented reality, would be about observation. Also associated with the nervous system, by the way, and electromagnetism and lightning. And you keep that one in mind there about the nervous system, especially when you've got a strong Mercury involved as well here. I have quite a strong Uranus signature in my chart too, and Mercury, and definitely would tend to have a slightly frazzled nervous system more than maybe your average person. So if you are feeling that in the nervous system, and I'm not a medical advisor, but one supplement that can help is your B complex vitamins, and so you might consider, how can I get a bit more vitamin B into my diet, just to maybe stabilize your nervous system just that little bit with those two energies, especially when they're in opposition like that. Uranus can also be about the higher mind, the higher self, and downloads that we can have, these downloads, these insights, or what I call kind of breakthroughs that can happen. With the central nervous system, we call it breakdowns. Nervous system breakdowns can happen too. Anything that happens that's quite sudden or surprising or unexpected. So Uranus's energy is not a stable, steady energy. It's quite erratic. It's I call it the faulty switch, especially when it's associated with electricity. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's on for 3 seconds, sometimes it doesn't come on. So it's an unexpected energy, and things can catch you by surprise. And it's always good. I know I've said this before in blog posts and in podcast, that especially when, Uranus is represented like that and a little bit of a troublesome aspect going on, to say, okay, I know that there could be a surprise or a shock coming up. I know that I probably will still react as if it is, but some of my awareness now is going to help my mind and my body come to grips with it perhaps a little bit more speedily. I know to expect that it could happen. And I say it that way. I do think, though, with energy is that, it's always going to be expressed in some way, and it's a good idea for us to almost be kind of selective on what we're bringing, what we're manifesting, rather than letting it express for us or choosing for us. So, if you think about how can I very consciously bring those energies in? And, we spoke before about Mercury being able to go over things and be able to write things down and talk to other people. That will give that a natural expression. And then looking at how can I step back from this a little bit and be more logical about it, to start bringing some of that Uranian energy into, and to maybe sit in silence or meditate. Meditation would be very much about Uranus as well. That meditation also can be a fantastic space for you to let go of the Mercury, the monkey mind almost, and allow for some of those downloads to come through. And if we're looking at some of the keywords associated with that Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces, well, one of the big ones is water. So very much associated with Poseidon, governs the seas, water. So, we are seeing as well some extremes in weather condition. Extremes with tsunamis and tidal waves and all sorts going on, but more at a kind of a localized level. Just maybe keep an eye on your on the pipes at home. Flooding can definitely be an expression of Neptune. Do have a plumber's number on hand if you need it. Things like burst pipes, flooding and burst pipes. I'm not going to mention all of the terrible things here, but deceptions and illusions is very much a Neptune, more in its negative connotation, admittedly. But do be aware that, with Neptune, you may not see things clearly. You might be putting on your rose-tinted glasses and seeing things maybe as you want them to be. And Neptune has a tendency to either be I don't know how to put it, more than what it is or less than what it is. To see things as being much better than what they are, or much worse, rather than what they actually are. We do have that conjunction with Saturn there, but even Saturn itself, reality there is a little foggy with it being in Pisces. And so, things might not be as they are right now. And it's just to be very open-minded and aware of that we can allow our fantasies and visions to lead. So if you're looking to use that Neptune in a more positive light and be more consciously aware of what it means, spiritual connection, if you have a particularly strong faith, or you have a religious practice, to be very involved in those practices, perhaps do something within the community to sit with yourself and I'm going to say consider being more compassionate in various situations. I could say forgiveness. I think that's a tricky place for people to come to, but that would be associated with Neptune. The other one being unconditional love, and we don't always see this between people, but I've certainly seen with a lot of people, I will love you if, the if being the condition. I will love you if we are together, or if you do this, or if you are this. Unconditional love being that more compassionate side of love, saying, I will love you even if you're not that. Now, that can leave us open to being to some kind of abuse, or to definitely not having some boundaries, which, I think you do need some boundaries. So just to keep those in mind, that was water, flooding, burst pipes, deceptions, illusions, fantasies, dreams, and any kind of spiritual connection, religious connection, transcendence, forgiveness, compassion, and unconditional love. Well, I hope that you found that hugely valuable. I know there was a bit more than there usually is. I think I recorded this about 10 times. Shall I mutter Mercury retrograde under my breath? Do have to have a little bit more patience. So thank you so much for listening in. I just want to leave you with 4 questions. There are tons of questions that you can use for prompting on the blog post. The link will be below, but I just want to mention 4 here, which I think are really, really good. So the first one is, what recurring emotional wound still shapes how I react to crisis? Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Number 2, what power dynamic do I tolerate because it feels familiar? Number 3, which desire have I hidden as too much or too dangerous? And the final one, what needs to end for something new and vital to begin? Yeah, that's one for the transformational piece there. So thank you so much for listening in. I really appreciate your support. For everything I've spoken about, all the links will be below in the description. Please do share, leave a review, share it with a friend would be lovely, whatever feels good for you. I'm also on social media. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. The links are below, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks.